is your 10-minute warning. Big Ten TED Live starts in 10 minutes. Welcome, Big Ten fans. This is Big Ten Ted Live. We are back for yet another edition of Big Ten Ted Live. We are keeping the party going for the third consecutive night. Very much appreciate you being along for the ride. We got some stuff to talk about. You know, maybe the reason why this is my third night doing a live stream is there's a lot of things to talk about. And believe it or not, one of those things to talk about is the Big Ten championship game. It seems like almost that game has kind of been put on the back burner a little bit because of all the transfer portal news and everything else going on, because man, there's a lot of player movement going on. We're going to get to that. But before we get to what we're going to get to later on, friendly reminder, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I got Big Ten content every single day. Also, follow on Twitter if you haven't done so already, at Big Ten Ted on Twitter. And sometimes the comments can get a lot at a time, so a good way to support the channel is via the super chat. It also kind of helps your comment stand out, so it makes sure that I can get to that comment. I can answer the question or comment that you have. So super chat to support the channel as well. So here's what we're going to get to tonight. Big Ten transfer portal news, specifically a handful of quarterbacks from Big Ten schools are entering the transfer portal. We're going to get to that. There's a football game to be played still in Indianapolis. The Big Ten championship game is going to be played. We got the Michigan Wolverines, the Purdue Boilermakers. I'm going to have a preview of that matchup. Wolverines and Boilers. Can Purdue hang with Michigan? Or is Michigan just going to steamroll Purdue? We're going to talk about that. So that kind of segues me into this weekend, where that game is going to be taking place on Saturday. I am out of town this weekend, going up to the LA of the Midwest, Harvard. I was thinking Harvard of the Midwest. The LA of the Midwest, Fargo, that's what I'm saying. Fargo, North Dakota, going to be the lead replay operator for the ESPN Plus broadcast of North Dakota State, Montana FCS playoffs. Really looking forward to that. That game is on Saturday at 2:30. Hopefully by the time we strike and tear down, I'll be able to get to the hotel and catch the Big Ten championship game and have a reaction video on the road, so to speak. So that's what I'm hoping for on that front. Also kind of something talk about, if you saw the poll on the channel today, really kind of weighing my options as it pertains to basketball coverage on the channel as well. I think I'm definitely going to hold off until January, until the end of the football season, because there's a lot of football to talk about, because we got portal news, we've got bowl previews, and then of course the bowl games. There's a lot to get to still on the football side of things. And then once we get to January, we'll kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. All right, let's get into the program. First things I want to talk about before we get into transfer portal news, there's big changes going on at Northwestern. Right, a lot of coaches let go. And that involves defensive coordinator Jim O'Neill, who it sounds like he's going to be able to land on his feet and get a position coaching job in the National Football League. But man, Northwestern is really in a tough spot right now. And of course, I think this appears to be the right move. They're not going to obviously make any changes at the head coaching position with Pat Fitzgerald, but it's these position coaches, it's the coordinators. I think that's where they're going to start with this Northwestern program. And then they'll kind of see what happens from there, and they'll kind of branch off from there. But changes need to be made. I don't think there's any doubt about that. This is a program that's really been suffering, really ever since 2020. Okay, 2021, 2022, they've had tough seasons, and I think that's putting it mildly. Of course, this season, you go 1-11, don't win a game in the United States, you lose to an FCS team. That's rough. So Northwestern kind of having some troubles and making some changes. And speaking of the Northwestern Wildcats, that's where we'll kind of get into our transfer portal news. One of their top playmakers, Malik Washington, their wide receiver, has entered the transfer portal. When you look at a guy like Malik Washington, led the team in receiving this season, 65 catches, 694 yards. He also had 500 yards receiving last season. Like, this is a guy that, over the past couple of years, Northwestern has struggled offensively, but he's a guy that they've been able to rely on at the wide receiver position. So, this is another big loss. Northwestern didn't need any more, and now, well, they're going to get more. So I really believe Pat Fitzgerald, they need to go into the transfer portal to really find somebody, to really find a handful of guys. Losing Malik Washington is big right now. Evan Hull is kind of their program right now, right? And he's becoming I think he's a really good running back. I hope he doesn't find himself in a situation where, I'm going to hit the portal to try to go to a bigger school, get on a bigger stage, that kind of thing, because you like to see balance within the Big Ten. You like to be able, to see, teams like a Northwestern and Indiana, those kinds of teams still remain good and hold on to their good players, but remains to be seen. Okay, let's talk about the transfer portal. Here are guys that entered the transfer portal today. First, Connor Bazelak is entering the transfer portal, the starter for the Indiana Hoosiers. He's entering, because remember, he transferred from Missouri to Indiana this season. He's entering the transfer portal as a grad transfer. So he's got one more year of eligibility. Showed some flashes with the Hoosiers this season, but overall a little bit of inconsistency. But when he was at his height and when he was playing good, he was able to pitch the ball around the yard pretty good. And remember, he put up some good stats at Missouri as well. So that's Connor Bazelak. Christian Veilleux, Penn State, he was kind of the third string guy. He's a 3-star guy coming out of high school. He was kind of just hanging around in that quarterback room. He's got 3 years of eligibility left. Obviously, with Drew Allar in that quarterback room, he's going to be the guy. He's the future of the program. This really doesn't surprise me that he's going to be able to find an opportunity. And maybe Christian Veilleux is kind of a guy that can latch on to a group of 5 program somewhere, and maybe he can really make some progress there and really show his skills at that kind of program. All right, people are in the chat are talking about it. Let's talk about it. Alex Padilla has entered the transfer portal. Former Iowa quarterback, backup quarterback these last couple of years for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and he's got 2 more years of eligibility. Okay, when I look at Alex Padilla, I think a big problem, I think a big deal is his coaching staff. I don't think Brian Ferentz really believed in him. Of course, I actually just watched the comment on Twitter. Somebody pulled it back from the archive, so to speak, about Brian Ferentz in that press conference. A reporter saying, "What's the downside to trying a new quarterback?" And he's like saying, "What's the upside?" So what's the upside of me putting Alex Padilla in there? That really rubbed me the wrong way, and who knows how it made Alex Padilla feel. I really believe we saw some flashes in the second half of that Nebraska game that, hey, you put the ball into this guy's hands and good things can happen. Look, I believe it's in his best interest to get out of this Iowa program. And we talked about it yesterday on last night on the live stream. Why would Cade McNamara come into Iowa, considering what's the situation is? With Alex Padilla gone and now Spencer Petras, we're not sure what the status is with his injury. Are we going to see Joey Labus in a potential bowl game for the Iowa Hawkeyes? There's some serious questions. I feel like if they were going to get rid of Brian Ferentz, they would have done it already. Maybe they'll wait until after the bowl game. I think there's a lot of questions to be answered. And as we know, this transfer portal, you got to try to, impress some of these guys. I don't think they have a choice right now. No Petras, no Padilla. Is a 3-star Joey Labus a guy that's going to be able to come in and do the job? I don't think so. They need to go to the transfer portal. So we'll see if Iowa can evolve as a program and can get there. So we got some comments here coming in. Let's get to some comments, of course. Alex Padilla of Iowa leaves via the transfer portal. Why? Well, I just felt he was disrespected. And I think he felt that, I watch him and I'm like, if you get the right coach, coaching him up, and if you get him in the right scheme and the right system, I think Alex Padilla, I think he could do some things. I'm not going to say he's going to Charlie Jones this thing, but Yeah, look, and I don't know where it is. Like, what? Maybe Alex Padilla transfers to a Group of 5 school, lights it up for a couple of years, and really gains some confidence that way, and increases his possible NFL stature that way. Can he latch onto a Power 5 program? Can he start at the Power 5 level? I think is a question that you got to ask yourself as well. So I think that's why. When you look at why it didn't work out, I think it has a lot to do. Like, look, we know. Like, there's a lot of change going on in the Big Ten. Look at the evolution of programs in the West, like a Wisconsin, like a Nebraska. Iowa, it seems to me like the Iowa Hawkeyes are falling behind just a little bit. Dudley Booger Dawson says Cade McNamara is the reason why. That's been the hot rumor. It talked about it last night on the show. Is Cade McNamara, is he the guy that's going to do it? Rattlers Sports Network checking in. Thanks for coming aboard. Who is Iowa's quarterback next year, and why would Alex leave? He had the job. I think he did have the job. I think this is good on Alex. This is why we have the transfer portal, right? When kids maybe feel like they're stuck in a situation, and like you have Alex Padilla that says, I don't want to play in Brian Ferentz's scheme. He's kind of, he said what he said in that press conference in the middle of the season. I think I can go and succeed somewhere else. Power to the player, right? This is what it's all about. Transfer portal, name, image, and likeness. And I think Alex Padilla saw that. Now, okay, could he come back to Iowa? Sure. But I think he feels like, you look at the Charlie Jones effect, right? And I think that's going to be a big thing, especially for Iowa wide receivers, maybe other skill positions at the University of Iowa. I think he can go succeed somewhere else where they're really going to put him in a situation to really develop his passing ability. Because look at this. You got Caleb Johnson coming back, who's probably going to be the focal point no matter who's at quarterback. The running game is probably going to be the focal point next season for the Iowa Hawkeyes. So the big question I have is the quarterback that comes in there probably ain't throwing the football a lot. Probably not going to progress a lot as a passer. So if you're looking to progress as a passer, you're looking to improve a lot, maybe Iowa is not the destination for you. So that's kind of what we have in terms of Alex Padilla. Dennis Young checking in. Padilla almost led a second-half comeback against the Huskers. I said it. I saw flashes of brilliance from Alex Padilla, but maybe... I don't know. I think Alex wants to improve as a quarterback. Good on him. He's got 2 years to do it somewhere else. Joseph Ford, you are reading my mind, because right on my notes over here on this Chromebook, I've got Luke Altmaier and Hudson Card as quarterbacks potentially for a Big Ten program. Not Big Ten, but could be a Big Ten target. Hudson Card. Hudson Card was in a quarterback competition with Quinn Ewers at Texas. Luke Altmaier was in a quarterback competition with Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. Both of these guys were in contention for starting quarterback jobs at big-time programs down south. And I think if I'm a Big Ten program, I made a list of them right over here. Iowa, Indiana, Wisconsin, Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue. Look at the flag if you want to mention more. I mean, I look at Rutgers. I see Gavin Wimsatt of Penn State. Ohio State. Is Michigan State? Like, does Mel Tucker and look? Yeah, I think Hudson Card gives me a better chance to win and develop than Peyton Thorne. I don't know the answer to that question quite yet. But I really believe that there should be some Big Ten teams that should target these guys. Look, I don't think a Hudson Card or a Luke Altmaier. I think they're too talented to go to a place like an Indiana or a Northwestern, but do they see the returning wide receiver talent at a place like Illinois? And they say, that looks pretty good. I like that. They see what's going on at Purdue, right? A offense that favors quarterbacks that like to throw it around. Like, that there's some possibilities for some of these guys left out there. And there's going to be more guys. This is just the start of everything. You're in early December. That's when kids can really start the transfer portal process. So we're going to see a lot more guys hit the portal. So you kind of got to let it sit back. Let it happen. Let the guys enter the portal and try and go out there and get some guys at the quarterback position. I think you're going to see a lot of transfer quarterbacks. Been looking also at Nebraska, been looking at some reports. It sounds like Matt Rule and Casey Thompson are trying to stick together. It sounds like Matt Rule is trying to convince Casey to stay at Nebraska. So I think that would be great for both parties. So I think that would be really good. Let's transition. Before we transition, just want to finish up with some comments. I'm going to get to Michigan. I'm going to get to Purdue. That's the big point of this live stream, talking about the Big Ten championship game. So we'll get to that. Just want to answer a few questions here in the comments from the Badass Buckeyes. Who is Ted Steen? I talked about this last night on the live stream. Grew up in Wisconsin, was a Badger fan for a while. I currently live here in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, but I've been watching Nebraska. I've been a Nebraska fan kind of for a long time, but I just really like Big Ten football from afar. You know, there's been times I've never been in a situation. I think I was a Notre Dame fan there for a little bit as well. So I've kind of bounced around a little bit. I've never really latched on to one program specifically. I've always been, let me watch Penn State versus Indiana. Oh, then I'm going to watch Michigan versus Purdue, so I've always been a Big Ten fan at heart. I've always loved the style of play. I've just always been a Big Ten fan. So that kind of answers that question. We got another question here from the Rattler Sports Network. Do you do basketball? Talked about that at the beginning of the live stream. Is that I do basketball. I actually did a Big Ten basketball preview. I attended Big Ten Basketball Media Days back in October, and I put a poll out on the channel saying, hey, do you want to see basketball? When do you want to see basketball? At the earliest, I'll probably, because there's so much going on in December football-wise with the portal, with everything, and of course, there's probably going to be some December playoff games, in the future in the next couple of years. So you could probably depend on basketball coverage really kicking in around the middle of January, because January to July is a lot of time to fill for football. But yeah, you'll probably see some basketball coverage somewhere around that time. Joseph Ford, there's no off season. Do you get to sleep, or are you just glued to the Twitterverse? I sleep. Have to sleep at the very least 7 hours. A perfect sleep is 8 hours. For this guy. Still got to wake up, still got to go to the full-time job, still got to do this, but you're right. Always seem to be monitoring the Twitterverse out there, so to kind of catch up and everything going on. And I've been following this, man. I remember back following recruiting. I remember Terrell Pryor coming out of high school, out of Jeanette, Pennsylvania. I mean, you talk about so many of these guys that I really like recruiting. I really like just football in general. Football is, I think, my number one, and that's why I kind of mentioned about basketball is, I guess, so that's why I posed the question to you guys. Would you want to see what would you engage with, I guess, the most? And it seems like a lot of people like football over there. So I hope that answers that question. More from the Rattler Sports Network. Iowa fans were not letting Nebraska. Yeah, I saw that coming from an Iowa fan. I don't think that's fair. I did see that. I think there was a video maybe on the Nebraska Twitter account. I saw some Iowa fan. They had had their hand on the ball on the Heroes Trophy and literally it was just a bad look. It was not a great look for Iowa, for some Iowa fans during that game. So you hate to see that. But I guess at this point, who cares? Okay, it happened. It's unfortunate, but, whatever. More from the Rattler Sports Network. Iowa got a 4-star quarterback for 2023. Could he be the new quarterback? I heard about that. The name slips my mind currently. So I know that's an option. And, you can't just rely on a bunch of transfer quarterbacks. So, yeah, you gotta, if you've recruited a guy, it depends, it depends. Are these guys, can they come in and make a difference? Does the Iowa coaching staff think they can do it? That would be a total Iowa move to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go with this kid or this kid when they're not that great, when, you've got a good defense and you've got a good team that could maybe win 9 or 10 games now, and you stick with a freshman or sophomore quarterback that's unproven. So I'm going to stick with that. All right, it is time to transition into the Big Ten championship game. We've got a game this weekend. Yeah, I know there's a lot of other stuff going on, but we are going to determine a Big Ten champion. Michigan and Purdue will battle it out for the Big Ten championship. And there's a lot of factors to see. And the big question has to be, can Purdue hang with the University of Michigan? Now, when you take a look at this matchup, and I'm the University of Michigan, I want to absolutely take it to Purdue. This is a Purdue rush defense that has given up 100-yard rushers in the last 5 games of this season. This is a Purdue rush defense that's not that great. And if Blake Corum is not 100%, and if he hasn't completely healed, you don't play him. Because I think you proved one thing against the Ohio State Buckeyes. You can move the ball even if it's only with Donovan Edwards. You can move the ball. This offensive line can wear down a defensive front as this game goes on. And if they can wear down a front, a really good front, especially on the defensive line like Ohio State, you bet your butt that they can do it as well to the Purdue Boilermakers. Now, the health of Blake Corum is so key in this game. I think Blake Corum is out of this game. Purdue's got to try to take advantage of that. Speaking of Purdue and what they need to take advantage of, they need to hit big plays down the field, I believe, to stay in this game. Because you know what Michigan is going to want to do? They're going to want to play boa constrictor football. They're going to want to latch on and tighten and tighten and tighten and tighten until they squeeze the entire life out of you. That's how Michigan plays football. So Purdue needs to hit the big plays down the field. Now, good luck with that, taking on the top-ranked pass defense in the entire Big Ten Conference. Mike Sanders still might have something to say about that. Now, Charlie Jones, I believe he's got to have a big game. Aidan O'Connell, of course. Payne Durham at the tight end position. He's got to have a big game. But you got to look at other guys to step up for the Purdue Boilermakers. Andrew Sawinski. You got to look at Mershawn Rice, TJ Sheffield. Like there's other guys. And, of course, I think if Purdue wants to win, you can't talk about Purdue possibly pulling the shocker without talking about their young running back, Devin Mockabee. I think he's one of the best young running backs in the entire Big Ten this season, and I think he's going to if Purdue wants to hang with Michigan, he's going to have to be a difference maker. Look, I know Jeff Brom wants to throw the ball, and he is going to have to throw the ball to be able to contend against the Michigan Wolverines, but they need some balance. Look, I think that's one thing we found out about Purdue this season. When they're a balanced football team, when Devin Mockabee is involved, this is an offense that can move the football. This is an offense that can do some things. So they're going to need Devin Mockabee to be a big part, and maybe he can get some explosive plays in the running game. But even if Purdue can get explosive plays in this game, Michigan proved last week they can go back and forth with a football team. So, Michigan's, they're going to try to line up. They're going to try to grind it out against this Purdue team. But if for some reason Purdue hits a big play to Charlie Jones, they hit a big one to Payne Durham, whatever happens, they continue to hit big plays. They continue to move the football down the field. Michigan can combat that. J.J. McCarthy can throw the ball, I believe, against this Purdue secondary. Like, they can go tick for tack. They proved that last week against an explosive offense in the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is a Michigan team that gets better as the game goes on. That's what you got to keep in mind for Purdue. Okay? Because look at Ohio State last week. They get shots, touchdowns in the first half. You got to keep it going. A big question is, which Purdue team are we going to get? They've had some consistency issues this season. And you got to stay consistent from the first half through the second half. I just don't know if Purdue has enough firepower because, to be honest with you, Michigan is going to try to control the clock, run the football, keep Purdue's offense on the field. It seems like there's going to be a lot more pressure on this Boilermaker offense because of that fact, because whenever they get, especially if Michigan's able to go 80, 70 yards down the field, score touchdowns, even if they kick field goals, some of the time as well, it's going to put a lot of pressure on this Purdue offense, especially if they get behind, if they're playing catch up. It seems like every time they get the ball, they're going to have to go down and score. So they're going to need maybe their best offensive performance of the season. Their offensive line is going to have to play well. Maybe they hope some of these Michigan players that are a little banged up right now aren't able to go in the Big Ten Championship. So, look, I would like to see Purdue have this game be fairly competitive. You want to put on a good showing, of course, in the Big Ten Championship game. But from a Big Ten point of view, I want to see Michigan make a statement in this game, right? We've got the college football playoff on the horizon. You made a big statement by beating Ohio State. Don't have a setback. Don't have a fluke where, now you're playing a one-possession game and it's a one-possession win against Purdue. You need to keep that confidence up. You need to keep that momentum up. If this is going to be a national championship caliber team, they need to go out there and play with confidence, regardless of who's on the field, healthy or not, who's ever on the field. Like, even if they don't have Blake Corum or some of these other guys that are banged up right now, this is still a superior team in Michigan over the Purdue Boilermakers. Look, Purdue needs to hope for some penalties. They need to hope for some turnovers. They need to hope for some fluky stuff, I think, if they're going to want to stay in it. And I think they need to have their best game of the season. What do you guys think? Who's going home with the Big Ten championship trophy? So that's my recap that's kind of my preview of the Big Ten championship game. So let's kind of dive into some comments. Let's have a discussion here regarding the Big Ten championship game, because, I think this, I look at last year, like you look at that Iowa defense and Michigan. There was some plays early on where Iowa should have scored early in that game, but Purdue's, I think, got to strike. They got to strike, and they got to strike quick, and they've got to strike early. I think that's the thing, because there's been times this year where maybe Michigan doesn't get off to the greatest start in the world early in this game. But like I said, they get better as this football game goes along. I don't think there's any question about that. Dennis Young checking in once again. Could OSU hang with Michigan? Could Purdue hang with Michigan? The answer is no and no. Michigan by 24 with or without Corum, according to Mr. Young. Look, I don't think this is going to be like last year. Like, what is Iowa? I think Iowa put a grand total of 3 points on the scoreboard at Indianapolis. Like, I think Purdue could do double digits against Michigan. It's just they're going to need to hit those big plays. Kind of like Nebraska's game plan against Iowa, right? Where they hit those big plays down the field, those explosive plays. I didn't think they were going to be able to hit them, but they hit them. That's kind of Charlie Jones. That connection needs to be really, really good. Patty Grimes kind of checking in here today. Need to rest Corum until the college football playoff. Yeah, it seems to be. That's what we're looking at. Josh Cussell checking in. Maccabee with 5 to 10 bounds will be a top 5 running back. I really like Devin Maccabee. Some of the best Purdue games this season have been where Devin Maccabee has been really good. And I think he needs to be good for Purdue to be able to compete with Michigan in this football game. Charlie needs to go off. Peyton, Maccabee, like that's what needs to happen. But if he doesn't have that, if that doesn't happen, Payne Durham, Charlie Jones, if those guys don't have the game of their life, a great game, that's where you might get in to a little bit of trouble. Maybe some trick plays. I think that's more on the Purdue side of things. Remember the Iowa-Purdue game. You said if Purdue would just run the ball, they would be good. 3 weeks later, Purdue's in the ship. Yeah, they didn't want to run the ball during that game, did they? Which was really weird to me, because that was a really windy game, if I remember. That was all the weather. That was Ohio State Northwestern. That was the big weather kind of going west or east of here, east of the Mississippi River. There was a lot of wind going on that weekend, and yet for some reason he still didn't want to run the football against Iowa. That was really weird. Jeff Brom has kind of gotten along better with the running game as of late. So yeah. And a big question is the consistency. Mention that. Which Purdue team will show up? Which Purdue team is going to be the team? Because there have been some inconsistencies. I want to see this balanced team. I'm kind of checking in here on some more comments. Michigan being the second half team. I want to see them play a complete game. Now, I'm not saying they're going out there and they're not playing for 60 minutes, all that stuff. But they just really, I think that's part of who they are. They just wear you down over time, where maybe teams have more energy in the first half, but when you play against this type of style, this type of team for 60 minutes, they seem better in the second half as well. Mark Edwards saying Michigan does not need to make a statement in this game. They just need to win by 12-20, set out the starters that are banged up. Look, they don't need to do anything. They don't need to do anything that I tell them. They don't necessarily need to make a statement. I would just like to see them make a statement. I would just like to see them play well, and I'd like to see them have a lot of momentum, I think, going into the college football playoff. So I think that's kind of where at least I sit with things right now. There isn't much I'm concerned about with Purdue injuries, but gameplay, not hanging in there. Joseph Ford, Michigan beats Illinois by 2. Also, Michigan crossed. Yeah, which I think a lot of that Illinois game had to do with the injury to Blake Corum, but you got to give a lot of credit as well to Brett Bielema in Illinois. That was a good football team this season, and they played well and nearly pulled it out against the Michigan Wolverines. So I'd like to see that as well. Mark Edwards, Purdue reminds me of a combination of Maryland on offense and Rutgers on defense. That's a very interesting comparison because I think Rutgers has been I know sometimes the score doesn't necessarily reflect it, but I think Rutgers has been a good defensive team. Aaron Lewis was named All Big Ten today on the defensive line. I think Rutgers had maybe a little bit of a better defense than Purdue, personally. Score prediction from Patty Grimes. Michigan taking it 42-17. Yeah, I see a Michigan blowout as well. John Spitzy checking in. Michigan by 30. Seeing a lot of Michigan wins. Seeing a lot of, a lot of Michigan by a lot. So that's kind of what I'm seeing a lot of right now, which doesn't really surprise me. That's really the game that's expected. I don't think anybody's expecting Purdue to really come in here and upset the apple cart too much. I think this is a team that's going to maybe get a couple of drives, maybe get some points on the board. It's hard for me to imagine for 60 minutes Purdue really competing at a high level against Michigan. I think maybe they'll be able to put some points on the board early in this contest. Maybe, they'll be able to hang with Michigan throughout, maybe into halftime. But once the second, I could see that. I could see Purdue coming out gunning. They get a couple of big plays on the board. They get a couple of scores. And then we get to halftime, and then, long Michigan drives. They just keep driving down the field, and then Purdue's going to have to avoid the turnover. Like Purdue starts, Aidan O'Connell has had a couple of games this season where he's turned the football over. If he does that wouldn't be great, now would it? For them. So that's kind of how I see that going on. It's going to be very tough for Purdue to really pull that off. Mark Edwards with some more comments. The game is inside. JJ will be able to let that ball rip, and he will, because if you live in Big Ten land, you must respect the run game. Die slowly. Yeah, like I said, that's kind of how Michigan plays. Michigan wants to slowly wear you down. And if they can continue to do that, and if they can continue to wear you down, like I said, you put some more pressure on your offense every time you go out there. They go and they drive 80 yards, 70 yards down the field. They put up a touchdown on 2 or 3 consecutive drives, and all the time they take off the clock. That's hard to combat as an offense to try to really come back for that right now. Mark Edwards, Michigan is going to make a huge statement by beating OSU 3 times in 14 months. They will take that momentum into the Georgia game and win that too. Yeah, one thing actually I forgot to talk about. I was in my rundown. I must have just glanced over it here. College football playoff rankings out today. We've got Michigan at number 2. We've got Ohio State at number 5 and Penn State at number 8 right now. I don't really hate any of those rankings. Maybe Penn State, even though the committee, you kind of listen to some comments that they had, the committee's still trying with Alabama. They're still trying. But I think there's maybe some conversation, but you look at Penn State is, I think that where they're struggling, I think is they haven't really beaten a lot of great teams. That's I think where things are, at least with me, is that I think Penn State's a good team. I think they're a really good team. You put them in a 12-team playoff, you put them in an expanded playoff format, I think things can go very well for the Penn State Nittany Lions. But, if you get in a situation, in this playoff with a 4-team playoff, now all of a sudden, it's just, they don't have the quality wins to really rank up there. So that's kind of where I'm at with Penn State. But they got Ohio State at number 5. It appears that the committee is setting up Ohio State. I think they're still talking about Alabama as well with 2 losses. Man, if they do that, I'm going to lose it. But Ohio State is sitting right there. If TCU loses to Kansas State, if USC loses to Utah for a second time this season, Ohio State is right there. Which one's more likely? I think that's one thing you got to start talking about. TCU to Kansas State, USC to Utah. I don't think any one of them is a stone cold lock it in. Yeah, bet your hard-earned money on it. I think Utah can compete with USC. They've already proven that. I believe the TCU-Kansas State game was a close game earlier on this season. I could be wrong on that. But, I think we're in a situation right now where Ohio State's just waiting there, and they're waiting for another opportunity. I don't think no matter who loses, I don't think whether it's TCU or USC, I think Ohio State would slide in as the number 4 team in the country. If I'm Michigan right now, I am rooting for TCU to beat Kansas State. I think TCU is a better matchup I think TCU is a better matchup for Michigan than USC. Look, USC is a really good football team right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think Caleb Williams right now is the Heisman Trophy winner. That Michigan-USC game, that could be a real good game. That could also be a real good national championship game. For example, if things hold right now, you might see a Michigan-USC national champion. That's an interesting discussion. Georgia and USC, can this USC offense overpower what Georgia has on defense? I think that's something to talk about as well. I'm always willing to talk about USC, the future Big Ten member. Very excited when that will happen. So that will be very good as well. So I think the playoffs is going to be really competitive this season. I think a lot of people are sleeping on TCU. I think a lot of people are maybe not taking them as seriously right now. So, I say that it would be a better matchup, Michigan facing off against TCU, but I also kind of look at the other side of the coin, and I kind of think TCU maybe, and so they got an offense that can put up some points. I'm not saying they'd give Michigan a huge challenge, but I think they could make it a pretty decent game. I think TCU has been a really good team. I know a lot of people have kind of underestimated them a little bit, but we'll see. We'll see. It should be interesting. We talked about beating Ohio State 3 times. That would mean an Ohio State-Michigan national championship. As a Big Ten guy, I would love to see that. I would also love to see a Big Ten team beat an SEC team so we can get that narrative out of the way and not have to beat that as well. Patty Grimes thinking Utah beats USC again. Very excited to see that matchup in the Pac-12 championship game right now. So a lot of people, according to Mark Edwards, forgetting that Michigan played without Corum and Edwards had a broke. Yeah, there was some doubt about even Donovan Edwards going into that game against Ohio State. Obviously, he played, and he played pretty darn good. And Donovan Edwards is a great running back. He was a very highly recruited guy. I honestly thought coming into the season that he would be 1A to Corum's 1B. Believe it or not, I can't believe I thought that now looking back on that. But I thought Donovan Edwards, but he was injured to kind of start, and he was a little bit slow getting going. So I think that's why maybe things maybe trailed off and weren't as good to start for Donovan Edwards. So yeah, but Blake Corum obviously came on and yeah, he did all right. By the way, big congrats. Well, I can kind of talk about this. Doak Walker Award finalist. You've got Chase Brown and Blake Corum along with Bijan Robinson at Texas. No Muhammad Ibrahim. I couldn't tell you Bijan Robinson's stats off the top of my head. I really couldn't. It's just weird to me that Muhammad Ibrahim is not in that. I know you can only take 3, and I get it, but. And Blake Corum, I did a video about this. Who's the best running back in the Big Ten? At the time, I picked Blake Corum. I think Chase Brown and Muhammad Ibrahim are very comparable. It's weird to me that Ibrahim's not in that discussion because I definitely think he is one of the best running backs in the country. He's obviously one of the best running backs in the conference, in a conference full of great running backs. How about just pick the Big Ten's best running backs? Pick the Big Ten's best running backs, and that'll give you your Doak Walker Award winner. How about we go with that? More from Patty Grimes. Ted, will Michigan fans travel well to Phoenix for the championship? So yeah, of course they will. Like you have your team in a chance to play for a playoff with a fan base like Michigan, even if the game is out west in the Fiesta Bowl. Yes, they are definitely going to travel. I want to see all that maize and blue out there in a playoff type of atmosphere. So that's kind of where. I see that coming in. They're going to travel. Of course they're going to travel. We've got a lot of good Big Ten running backs this season. A lot of guys did a lot of damage this season in the Big Ten Conference, and I want to see a lot. I'd like to see that, but you look at Chase Brown, you look at Blake Corum, you look at Muhammad Ibrahim, all of those guys are probably going to be NFL guys next season. So I think the next question has to be, who are going to be some guys next season in 2023 that will step up and be really good Big Ten running backs? I'd like to see Braylon Allen at Wisconsin really take some steps up. It kind of depends, obviously, what's going to happen. Is he going to be the running back at Wisconsin, or is he going to enter the transfer portal? I think that's a big question that needs to be asked. I know there's been some rumors about Michigan possibly talking to him early. This is what we got to try to limit in terms of transfers, these tampering issues. But I heard about that. But, you talk about Braylon Allen. Some of these, some of these other Illinois running backs, like a McCray or a Love, step up and be good. We've seen some flashes out of them this season. So we'll see. It's kind of like basketball. They had a lot of players. A lot of these top scorers, move on, whether it's going to play overseas or going to play in the NBA, So is that the same? And who knows who they get out of the transfer portal? Can they bring some good running backs into the conference that were playing elsewhere in other leagues? I think that's a conversation. Look, there's so many transfer portal discussions. That's kind of why I kind of said maybe we need to just put this off to the side. Maybe we need to wait for basketball until January, because there's going to be a lot to talk about football-wise here in the month of December. More score predictions as well. Thanks, Eric Holm, for watching. Final score, Michigan 45, Purdue 13. A lot of 30-point type of victories coming in for the Big Ten championship game here this season. And Iowa, they had a tough time last year. There was a thing, would they go down? Did they try a trick play and it got intercepted, or played a fourth down? They tried to get cute kind of early in that game, and it kind of came back to bite them, came back to beat the Hawkeyes in the championship there. Rattler Sports Network asking who wins Big Ten Kicker of the Year. Jake Moody, Drew Stevens, no Ruggles. I'm going Jake Moody. He don't miss. He don't miss. You know, a lot of times you get late in the game when you're watching games. I'm like, oh, could he miss? Could he not? Jake Moody. You see him go up, and he ain't missing. He ain't missing. Drew Stevens is good. He's got years left in him. I think he's going to be a good kicker, and no Ruggles. Also a solid kicker. But I go Jake Moody as the kicker of the year. I think he can be a really good NFL type of kicker as well. So that's how I see that going on. More from Mark Edwards, very active in the chat here tonight. For 2023, Edwards is back. Quorum has a year left, maybe 2 with COVID, but Quorum's probably going to be an NFL. He's probably going to be NFL bound with 2 really good years under his belt. Gash, I remember. Yeah, I know he's there as well. Transfer portal. I'm glad they cleaned it up a bit. There are windows. Yes. So I know we got the window here in early December. That's when that first one opens up. A lot of guys right now declaring for that transfer portal. The transfer portal period right now, and then, of course, 45 days after that, and then again in the spring. I think it's important to have these windows after the regular season and then after spring ball, because I know some things happen in spring football where it's like, oh, man, this guy came in, that happened, I'm not in the starting lineup here, whatever, something happened, kind of like Charlie Jones last year. I just don't want to see kids to be able to transfer. I like the windows, I guess is a roundabout way is what I'm trying to say, is windows are a big part. And I think that really helps. I think that really helps us be transparent with everybody involved as well. Jake, so I know Jake Moody has missed some field goals. I understand that. for the most part, he's pretty good kicking the ball through the uprights. He did miss 2 at Illinois and at 57 versus Ohio State. Well, it was a 57-yard field goal. So there's not a lot of kickers in the NFL that can boot it through from 57. I'll tell you that much. So I really like Jake Moody, and a lot of I don't know if it'll necessarily come down to that in the Big Ten championship game, but I honestly believe you could look at the college football playoff. It could maybe come down to that. It could come down to the leg of Jake Moody. Who's got the better kicker? And Michigan has one of the very, very best around. I really love what is happening over there with the University of Michigan. Appreciate the super chat, Mark Edwards. Love your work. Insight, keep it going. You know I'm going to keep it going. Very much appreciate the super chat. If you want to support the channel as well, you can do what Mark did and leave a super chat. It really benefits things. Here's a friend of the channel, John has checked in. Go Blue. Yes. We'll see what happens there with that. So Jake Moody leads college football in scoring as of last week. Thanks for the stat. Did not know that. A lot of Jake Moody talk in the comments. I think he could be a big time factor down the stretch. He could be a guy in these playoff games, right? The kicking game, whether you like it or whether you don't. That's something where having a good kicker is very important. I know that's probably kind of glanced over a lot of times, but to be honest with you, having a good kicker could be the difference of winning a championship and not winning a championship. Talked about college football playoff rankings before. If you weren't here earlier, Michigan 2, Ohio State 5, Penn State at number 8. Penn State would be a very tough matchup for a potential 12-team college football playoff as well. Talking transfer portal news. Maybe there's some guys that maybe you guys think who is eventually going to end up in the transfer portal. I have come to appreciate this time of year. I have come to appreciate transfer portal season because it is a season of optimism, right? Especially with new coaches coming in. Hey, man, if we can get this guy, we can get this guy, we can this guy, we can turn our team around, we can win the division, we can go to the conference championship game, we can do all of that stuff. So, That's the beauty of the transfer portal. It's a lot like free agency in professional sports. Okay, you see, look what Michigan State did year 2 with Mel Tucker. You go out and you find a star player, and you can turn yourself into a possible conference championship contender. And it kind of puts a lot of more pressure on coaches. I will definitely give you that. So you definitely see that. Definitely have seen that it puts a lot more pressure. Matt Rule, Luke Fickell, you're going to feel the pressure because of the transfer portal a little bit earlier. Mark Edwards. I've talked about this at length. Thoughts of Rule taking over at Nebraska, any major changes? I think it's a really good hire. I really liked what he said about establishing the line of scrimmage. I think he's done a really good job kind of talking about that as well. But I got a video on the channel, kind of my thoughts as well. So that is right there. So make sure you check out that Matt Rule video. I kind of put that, but I talked about it in the live stream as well yesterday. But I think Matt Rule's going to do. I think he's going to do good things. It's just we talk about it when he gets hired. We talk about it after the press conference. At some point, you want to see, right now, I just want to see who does he hire. He's bringing in, he brought in the offensive coordinator from South Carolina. I think there's some things that are putting into place. That's what I want to see right now. Does he retain Mickey Joseph? I know he can rebuild a program. Usually, if the past is any indication, usually he has a down year his first year, gets to bowl eligibility his second year, and then really jumps in year 3. But I think Husker fans are going to want it a lot quicker than that. That's just how I feel as well. More from John. Prediction, that will be, so I'm going to post the Michigan-Purdue Big Ten Championship game preview video on the channel tomorrow. That's going to drop at 7 a.m. tomorrow. And then that's when you will see the score prediction. Now, if you've really been following with the pick'ems, if you've been participating in the pick'ems on the YouTube channel, I post the over-under, all that sort of stuff. We have now gotten to a point. The Big Ten Ted Nation really caught up to me. I got a few wrong. You guys kind of flipped it around on me. Probably because I went with the upset. I picked Indiana over Purdue, and yeah. Looking back on that one maybe wasn't the best pick in the world. But hey, that was kind of I had been picking fairly safe this season. So I have a 1-game lead. I'd have to look back. I put a post out there about it fairly recently. I don't remember exactly what the records were, but I've got a 1-game lead on you guys. So we're probably both going to pick Michigan. In fact, I'm going to pick Michigan. So if everybody wants to chip in and vote Purdue, that would give you guys, if the upset does happen and if the shocking upset does happen, then that would tie us. And then we'd go into bowl previews with, so I'm going to be doing those pick'em through bowls. So we've got a chance. We're going to go back and forth. Right now, got a 1-game lead, but we'll see. That can maybe change a lot of things as well. Man, this transfer portal season, it's fun to watch at the very least, I guess. It's fun to see if you're a program that's hiring a new head coach, or that's maybe in a situation like a Michigan State, sitting there at 5-7, disappointing season. Our quarterback has been okay. Maybe we can make an upgrade. I don't know. That's what I really like about the transfer portal. Of course, we need more education. We need the grass isn't always greener, that kind of thing. I know there's been some coaches that have kind of talked about that as well. But, to be honest with you, I really think and I really believe that you're going to see a crazy transfer. From all I've heard, you're going to see a crazy transfer portal season. So if you're a team that needs to just get a couple of pieces and you're a couple pieces away, you might be sitting in a situation where maybe you can get those couple of pieces this year. And not every year you're going to have a plethora of talent in the transfer portal either. So who is Rule bringing with him? I see he's bringing Ed Foley, his former special teams coach, I think, from Temple. Scott Satterfield, he's bringing that offensive coordinator from South Carolina. That's kind of what I think everybody's waiting with bated breath on what he's going to decide with Mickey Joseph. I know I'm waiting to see what exactly is going to happen there as well. Got to keep your hands off of Jesse Minter. Hopefully he doesn't go anywhere. It's like what Matt Rule has been doing as of late. He's kind of bringing in guys that he's worked with in the past. So I think those are guys to kind of keep your eye on as well. So, if they can, so if you're looking at guys, if you're a Nebraska fan, say, who are we going to bring in? It's guys that have worked with Matt Rule over there in the past. Everyone seems to match up well against Purdue, according to John over there. Maybe teams that don't have a great pass defense wouldn't match up well, but, in this case, Michigan does have a very good pass defense, the very best in the conference. So I think it's going to be maybe Purdue will be able to throw it a little bit in this football game, but I don't think they're going to hold 60 minutes. He's not going to sling it around for 300 to 400 yards and all is going to be good in the world. I just don't see that. It's interesting, Mark, that you bring up Purdue as like an adolescent Ohio State. There's a lot of light versions of teams, I think, in the Big Ten this season. Iowa and Illinois, depending on who you think is better. One is a light version of the other. A Rutgers and Iowa, good defense, not a lot of offense. You mentioned Purdue and Ohio State. You mentioned Maryland and Ohio State. I think there's a lot of comparable teams that kind of have that kind of deal in the Big Ten conference right now. Man, it's the most wonderful time of the year here for many reasons. Christmas is right around the corner. We are less than 1 month away until the 25th of December. It's crazy that we're already almost at the end of November here, and the Big Ten championship game is upon us. We just got dumped here in Minnesota with I don't know how much snow, but it was a lot of snow here today. I had to drive back early from work in my car that's not exactly designed to be trekking through the snow over the hills and through the woods, so to speak. But we've reached that time. Can you imagine? All the snow is kind of coming down here in the Twin Cities this week. I'm like, can you imagine? Like, say we were playing, in a couple of weeks, say we were playing a 12-team playoff and Minnesota was hosting a playoff game and you got Auburn coming to Minnesota in a snowstorm. That's very interesting as well. So they got 8 inches of snow down in Burnsville, huh? Okay. I'm in the north. I'm in the Northeast Metro. But yeah, I don't think it was quite a foot of snow around here, but it was a lot. It was a lot. I think it's one of the more it's one of the bigger snowfalls I think we've had as well. Merry Christmas to everyone. Send some snow over here to Ohio. Over there in Ohio, not a lot of snow over there in the great state of Ohio. I know, of course, I'm sure you guys that follow the NFL kind of saw the picture of the Bills Stadium that was in so many snow that got the game moved to Detroit as well. Now, did I hear this right? I'm getting off track here, but I'll get back on track in a minute. So the Bills got their game moved to Detroit because of all the snow. They won that game. Forgot who it was against. And then they play the Lions at Ford Field the very next week, and they won that game. I saw on Twitter, I think I saw something I don't know if it was the first time in Ford Field's history, or at least the first time in a long time, where 2 consecutive games have been won or something by wouldn't be the home team, or I forgot what it was. It was some crazy, or won by the same team in Ford Field, maybe won by the same team at Ford Field, something like that. It was some crazy stat. It was something like that. So, but yeah. So, but anyway, getting back to college football and everything. We know the transfer portal is heating up. We know we've got Big Ten championship showdown coming up. It'd be very interesting to see what a 12-team playoff would look like this season with a Penn State team that I think is really, really good and continues to get better and better. Those young players have continued to evolve. We're talking December. We're talking weather. Worst places to play in December: Ann Arbor, Minnesota, Camp Randall, Lincoln, West Lafayette. In December, I think you're going to have to... So when you look at weather, okay, I think you're looking at two things. You're looking at precipitation. You're looking at the snowfall. That's number one. And I think you're looking at the bitter cold. Okay? So when I look at snowfall, I look at the Northeast. Okay, and I'm just going to start, you look at, is Rutgers going to make the playoff? Penn State. I mean, I don't know how many big snowfalls you get out in Pennsylvania, but maybe Penn State could get a nor'easter that kind of rolls through there, and that could cause some problems in December. But when you talk about the bitter cold, I think that's where you talk about Minnesota, right? And teams that could possibly be in the college football playoff. You talk about Minnesota, Wisconsin. Even though Madison is in the southern part of the state, still think it's cold. Still think Iowa would be a cold. Can you imagine a cold environment? Iowa, a great Phil Parker defense, a rocking Kinnick Stadium. That's the way to do it. That's how you do it. That would be a tough environment for anybody. And that's why, I think when it comes to the new playoff, I think we should do home games the first two rounds and then go to neutral sites for the semifinals and finals. In Ann Arbor and Ohio, Mark's saying it's the wind, and we saw it earlier this season, right? When Ohio State went to Northwestern, where some of these games were I think Iowa, Purdue, like I mentioned before, was a windy game as well. You look at a lot of these windy, I don't know if Northwestern's going to make a college football playoff when it's 12 teams or 16 teams or wherever, but that's another thing out by Lake Michigan over there. So, I like the tradition that college football has had. I like to maybe think of myself as a hybrid of a traditionalist and someone that really supports the new era of where college football is going. I like 12 teams. I could get down with 16 as well, but I think 12 is good because it kind of gives a little bit of incentive for those top 4 conference champions to really separate themselves as well. And I love the home games on campus. I just absolutely love that. I think we're getting to a point right now where we're just playing a lot of games. We're going to be playing almost 17 games. But, raise your hand. A good example is where I'm going to be on Saturday. I'm going to be doing, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm going to be the lead replay operator for the ESPN Plus broadcast of FCS playoffs. North Dakota State taking on Montana. And I think, they play 11 regular season games. They have a 24-team playoff. They play 15 games, 16 games, 7, you know what I mean? They play a lot of games. All right, Dennis Young, you are hitting it. You are hitting the sentimental part of me because this is the first time I've worked in North Dakota since about 2016-17. I spent the first 2 years of my career as a sports reporter up at the Fox affiliate in Fargo, North Dakota. And let me tell you one thing. I've lived in Wisconsin. I've lived in Minnesota. And even, visiting, but I'm talking about places I've lived. Those winters in Fargo, North Dakota. Even then, once a week, I cover North Dakota hockey, driving up to Grand Forks. I have never, the wind, because it's flat land up there. Okay, it is as flat as a friggin' pancake in North Dakota. Okay, and that wind, it's got nothing. It's got nothing in the way. It's got nothing in the way. So there's no valleys, there's no mountains, anything like that to really break it up. Okay? And those are some of the coldest winters I've ever been a part of, are those winters in North Dakota. If you want to visit Fargo, if you want to visit North Dakota, do it in the summertime. Okay, I've driven through North Dakota many times on my way to Colorado, visiting the Rocky Mountains, going to Montana and visiting Glacier National Park. I've driven through North Dakota many, many times. The winter time is not the time to do it. Let me tell you that much. So we got people in the comments here that are at least, at the very least, are able to relate to what I'm talking about. So that's very much appreciated. Getting off topic a little bit there on some things, but we'll see it. Kind of getting it back to the college football playoff discussion. Sunshine Design saying he likes the 4 teams and bowls. I don't mind it. It's just an invitational. I don't like the selection process. I think that's kind of where I have a big, and then I think that's why people think expansion is the way to do it. Mark Edwards saying we're going to have to change. It will have an impact on rivalries, but change or die, adapt or die. Like coaches are learning that. We talked about the transfer portal earlier today in this one. Oh my gosh, this kind of gave me, should be North Dakota fighting frostbite. Scott Frost to North Dakota? Not North Dakota State. That program's too good for Scott Frost. And then maybe not North Dakota either. Bubba Schweigert over there as head coach. I was kind of buddies with him when I worked up there and covered the Fighting Hawks football team as well. So yeah, I don't know if Scott Frost would fit in there as well. But a lot of good discussion, I did not expect coming into this live stream here tonight. So I appreciate the comments here tonight. Fargo, good movie. I've actually never seen Fargo. Fun fact. There's at the museum, there's like this visitor center museum when you're coming right off the highway. What are the 2 highways go? 94 and 29 there in Fargo. And they have like this wood chipper, exhibit in there. Never seen the movie Fargo. So there as well. It's the bias, I think, when it comes to the college football playoff. Snick is as a good point with that. It's just every other sport, and I know this has kind of been, even going back to the traditional way, like every other sport has clear defined ways to play for a championship. In the NFL, I know what's one thing I have to do. I have to win my division and I'm in. Okay. NBA and basketball isn't great at it anymore because it's just the top 8 and everything. Very much appreciate this, Mark. Guys, leave a like, help him out. Does it every day. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The channel is growing at a pretty decent rate as of late. So I very much appreciate all you guys kind of, and I'm looking to do more, kind of get more into this live stream. I really like the live streams, even though I'm kind of rambling and going on and off track a little bit here, but that's okay. That's okay. 12-team playoff. Eliminate one non. Okay, now we're talking the same language. Okay, we got problems. Now we're getting solutions to the problem. 12-team playoff, eliminate one non-conference game. Every team plays 8 league games. So what would that be? 8 league games and 3 non-conference games? Something like that? No more conference championships. Max 14 games. Like if you're expanding conferences, like you're at 16 teams now, like it's how do you determine the conference? Like you play 11 games? Like why couldn't, like that's how FCS does it. Okay, that's what I'm going to be walking right into this weekend. They play 11 regular season games, and they have a 24-team playoff. Can you imagine that it wouldn't be FBS anymore because there wouldn't be any bowls, but imagine that at the 1A level. Can you imagine a 24-team playoff? They play a 32-team playoff. I think they play 10 regular season games, 32-team playoff at the Division III level. Like, bowls have been... They're full of tradition. But these bowls have no tradition. The Cotton Bowl, there hasn't been a Southwest Conference since 1995. Okay, and that was the identity of the Cotton Bowl. The best team in Texas or Arkansas plays in the Cotton Bowl. Like that's been gone for a very long time. The Cotton Bowl has lost its luster for a very long time. A Rose Bowl, right? Big Ten, Pac-10. It's just, it happens every handful of years, right? The Rose Bowl was kind of the one that wanted to keep its tradition the most. And it's just, for the most part, they get Big Ten and Pac-12 matchups, but it just doesn't have the same luster and the same tradition. I don't think that it had in previous years. So I think the Rose Bowl is kind of the one that's kind of hanging on right now. And I mean, you look at some of these other games. The Sugar Bowl was the SEC champion, and you don't see that a lot because they're playing in the playoff. It's just the playoff is kind of, every 3 years or so. These are playoff games, and the conference affiliations don't really mean as much. And now the bowl games are just there. They're just playoff games. And then the non-playoff games, because of the playoff, they don't really matter anymore. Like, you get a bunch of opt-outs, you get this and that. It's the playoff that's important. And if the playoff is what's important, okay, if that's what we're going with and we're not going back, if that's what we're going with, then let's make the playoff important. Let's go all in. If it means playing 11 games, if it means taking away a game, or whatever, so be it. Here's Gavin checking in. Thanks, Gavin. Do you think there should be a brackets for college football? Because some teams play better near the end of the year, just like the Big Ten tournament. Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about that, kind of comparing it to the FCS level, where they play 11 games in a 24-team playoff. I wouldn't want to see it get any, like right now, 16 I think would be really good, because I think there's teams that really get hot at the end of the season, and they deserved, I think, to play for a national championship. And man, can you imagine, just put yourself, I know the powers that be probably won't even let this happen, but can you imagine, they play 11 or 12 regular season games, and there's too much money to be made on a conference championship game. But, can you imagine just a big playoff, a big tournament? You know how much money and revenue that would generate? If we're all about money and we're all about revenue, you put a 16, let's go a little bit more. You put a 24-team playoff like FCS. By the way, if you don't watch the FCS playoffs, you're really missing out. That's one of the best. That's one of the best playoffs in all of sports. So very much looking forward to that. We don't need. Here's Mark's bringing up some non-conference issues. If we are going to keep them, need to matter. Yeah, I agree that those SEC games right before rivalry week are ridiculous. What about this idea? Put FCS games in your spring game. So for your spring game, instead of just doing a walkthrough practice, why not play an FCS team in your spring game? Why not play a more structured game? And it helps an FCS team. You can still get the payout somehow, because I know that really helps teams a lot. Those FCS programs really stay afloat. You can pay an FCS team to come in to play a spring game against you, and then you maybe take that one away. I think that could be an option as well. There's a lot of options that I've thought of, and it's playing FCS teams in the spring game, right? It helps. I think both of those teams, and you can kind of structure it the way you want to. What about the bowl games? I've heard this as an idea. The bowl games at the beginning of the season. So instead of being post-game contests, the bigger bowl games at least, instead of being those contests, I really believe that maybe I know I'm not the biggest fan of a neutral site game, but maybe these big neutral site games can be these bowl games. So why can't the Rose Bowl, man, I can't imagine the Rose Bowl not being played at the end of the year. I know that's crazy to think about, but just bear with me for a minute. Why can't the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, why can't those be big marquee matchups at the beginning of the season? Now, you'll still have these bowls outside of teams that make the playoff, right? I think you'll still see that. Teams that are 6-6, 7-5, I still think you're going to see those teams. I don't think you're going to be able to kill that quite yet. I still think that's going to be there. I don't think you're quite getting rid of that. But I don't know. That's kind of just, I feel like I saw that on an ESPN article or something somewhere. But bowl games in the beginning of the season, play FCS teams in your spring game, maybe eliminate that FCS one non-conference games, as one of our commenters said before, and now you're just you're in a situation where maybe this is just how it's all going to play out. Here's more ideas from Mark. Maybe kill it all. Just start with a non-conference game and right into double elimination round robin. So the whole season is a playoff. Oh, I think that's how I'm interpreting that. That's something. To start with a non-conference game and right into a double elimination round robin, 64-team college football. Maybe I'm not reading that right, but that would be the worst for preserving. Yeah, it wouldn't be great. It wouldn't be great. Yeah, that's an interesting. I just want to see the best. Look, bowls at their height through the 80s and the 90s, even into the 2000s a little bit. I honestly believe that. I'm losing my train of thought now. I honestly believe that the bowls at one time were prestigious and they served their purpose and people were interested in playing in them. Now that's just not the case anymore. They served us for a very long time. Okay? Like at work, I work for a smaller community TV station, and we just had a piece of equipment that was in our truck for 10 years. 10, 12 years. We had a replay machine that was in our truck for 10 to 12 years, and it died. And you know what? We're not saying, "Oh my God, how could this piece of equipment die?" We're saying it served us well for that long, and now it's time to move on. Like that's I think where we need to get to for college football. And I know there's money, and I know that's what we're all talking about right now. And I know that's important to all these conference commissioners and all these people. But you're telling me there's not more money in a FCS-style playoff? You're not telling me there's more money playing bigger non-conference games? Like, I know tradition, it's a big deal. I get it. I get it. Yeah, right here, Sunshine Design. That's what I'm saying. Bowl games before the conference games, right? Those big marquee, and maybe you can determine and not schedule 8 to 10 years in advance, and you can say, maybe, I thought I put a Google Drive document of this together. Maybe I'll share it during my next live stream. But maybe there's a way to do it where the Rose Bowl picks the winner of the Big Ten and the Pac-12, but they play at the beginning of the season. And the Rose Bowl is kind of a weird one because that's UCLA's home stadium, so hopefully that doesn't intersect with a UCLA game. So, like, that's something, you could do. You could keep the conference affiliations. The SEC champ plays the Big 12 champ every year in the Sugar Bowl. Like in these big, and then that's maybe where the conference affiliation, I think something could work with that. It's just, and I know one kind of counterpoint to that was brought up before was, well, bowl games in the wintertime are a big part for tourism. Especially to these warm weather places, get people out of the north, get people out of the mountains, get people out of wherever and bring them to the Bahamas, bring them to Florida. It's big for tourism, these bowl games. I get that. I understand that. Hey, maybe people want to travel in September instead. I don't know. So I know September can still, even here in Minnesota, I know September can still get pretty warm as well. John saying a podcast in the future. I've always had that in the back of my mind. I'm like, I should just make the videos. I should just rip the audio and post it on podcasts. I don't know if people would be interested in that. I don't know if that's something anybody would be interested in the future, or make some of these more structured live shows into a podcast. I tossed around the idea of kind of bringing on guests in more long-form interview segments, whether it's other media members covering other Big Ten teams. So that idea has been floated out there in the past. So if you've got any thoughts on that, any recommendations, what you'd want to see, leave that, whether it's in Twitter here, just leave it somewhere. Let me know what you'd like to see. Kind of getting back to this good conversation. Got to find a way to preserve best of regional tradition. Ha! The nationalization of college football playoff already on course. Yeah, like USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten. Like, if that doesn't tell you how much people care about tradition, like, yeah, would I like to see it preserved? Like, I want to see the main things preserved. Like, if Michigan doesn't play Ohio State, yeah, then we got a problem. The answer is college football is money. What was the question? Yeah, we're going to get lost, going to go down the rabbit hole just a little bit here, which is fine. Scheduling's a big deal. I think that's a big problem right now for a lot of people involved. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see better matchups. I'd like to see teams that were good last year face off. I don't know. I really like that idea of putting bowls in the beginning of the season. John says, I think the Rose Bowl is bigger some people than the actual game. I've heard that you can't go to both in the same day. That's what I've heard. You can't go to the Rose Bowl. Even though it seems like time-wise they might match up. I've heard from other folks that have attended the Rose Bowl. I grew up in Wisconsin, so they made it a few years there. But yeah, I've known people that have said, yeah, you can't do both in the same day. Probably maybe traffic or whatever in LA, and I don't know. Just what I've heard. Not sure how accurate, but it's just what I've heard. Here we go. Notre Dame and Michigan scheduled for 2032 and 2033. They do this because of logistics and financial obligations. Like, I know. I know there's reasons to all this stuff. I just don't like the reasons. That's it. I just don't like it. I don't like it. Kind of one thing that I have been doing, and this is a big project of mine. Maybe I'll share it once again in a future live stream. I'm putting, I've only done 5 years of this. I put together my own little mock college football universe, which I have just Excel spreadsheets on top of Excel spreadsheets. Basically, I have it starts, this is crazy. I feel like such a nerd right now. I am. It's a great channel, by the way, College Football Nerds, but I feel like a college football nerd right now. I had the scenario back in the early 90s that instead of Notre Dame going independent and all this NBC stuff, I says, I know the CFA. Remember that? The CFA back in the day where they all had their own television contract? I almost had that. And I had 7 conferences of 9 and 10 teams. All the big schools all play each other. They don't play the smaller conferences. And, and I had where you have the bowl games. After the bowl games, the winner of the bowl games, the top 2 ranked teams after the bowl games play for the national championship. So if that's something you want to see. Haven't touched that in a while, but I'm on the 1995 season as of right now. I had Arkansas. Instead of joining the SEC, I had them joining the Big 8, so that's the Big 9. I had Penn State, Miami, Florida State, Notre Dame joining the Big East with Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Pitt, those kinds of teams. So, yeah, that's one thing I've done. Crazy. Yeah, that takes a good amount of work to put that together. Maybe someday once it's finished, I'll release it. Scheduled way too in advance. Yeah, maybe teams don't set them. Maybe there's a commissioner in the NFL. Maybe there's people that set the schedules instead. That would be a body, a person, a whatever that is unbiased. Good luck finding that in the world of college football. That puts the schedules together. Maybe the Big Ten obviously would put together their conference schedule. But maybe there's a better way to put together non-conference schedule. Here's some recommendations from Mark. Just do a Rich Eisen, Joel Klatt, a show with a script, then cut it up. Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm doing. Oh, sorry. That's kind of what I'm doing with this show. Is I am cutting up portions of this show, and you will see videos. You'll see the Michigan-Purdue preview, and as you've probably noticed, I've been doing a lot more live streams as of late. What my goal is I love the live stream portion of this. I like taking comments. I like seeing this. But I also like the live format. I work in live TV. Like, that's my background. That's my job. And I like the live format. I hate editing. I just hate editing. anything. So I try to make the set. I try to look everything here look as good as possible. But yeah, that's what this. I know this is a very unscripted thing, but there are segments during the show. Like over here, I have in my rundown different segments, and then I will post those videos to the YouTube channel. So that's the direction I'm kind of going instead of just recording, because a lot of times when I record a video, I do so many outtakes. I remember sometimes there's sometimes where I re-record a video like 15 times. And I'm just like, no, I don't like doing that. So I think what I'll do in the future is more live streams. I like the interaction. I'm a live guy anyway. So, and I like doing that as well. So that's kind of something you'll probably see more live streams, cutting up the videos, and going in there. Hopefully more scripted segments. So what I'm trying to do is trying to do my segment, and then I get to comments, then we chat, get to a segment, chat, that kind of thing. Also hoping to, I did mention this in my last live stream, hoping to open up, I have a Google Voice phone number, so I'm hoping to take some calls, so I'm not talking for 2 hours straight. Would like to hear your guys' thoughts on some of that as well. The other issues with schedules is that the AD is responsible for them. ADs don't ever see the strings being pulled over their heads. Yeah. So a lot of times, you get people, you get these ADs at a conference and say, hey, we should play a game against each other. Yeah, we should. Let's make millions of dollars. Like, like that's kind of how these things come up. So, and a lot of times, teams can change from year to year. It's just crazy that these things are done this far in advance. Keep divisions, rebalance. So we're talking, I think, Big Ten back here. Keep divisions, rebalance the divisions each year. This probably isn't going to happen because now the NCAA said you don't need divisions for this, for some of these big conferences. But I thought about that as well. I mean, leaders and legends, love it. I think there were flaws with leaders and legends. But I had an idea recently that says, what if we had divisions, but we rotated it every 2 years or so, 2 to 3 years, but the divisions, you had to move with your rival. For example, Ohio State and Michigan moved together. They're always in the same division. Purdue and Indiana, always in the same division. Nebraska and Iowa, always in the same division. Michigan State and who is their rival? Penn State. Yeah, Michigan State, Penn State. So you always move together, and maybe you do like a divisions draft or something, or you try to balance it as even as possible. Like that's something that could be done, So that way you don't see a rematch from Ohio State, Michigan to Ohio State, Michigan in the championship game. I didn't mind, a lot of people didn't like leaders and legends. I didn't mind it as much. That's just me. Appreciate it, Snick. Second time catching you, sub. Enjoy your style and chop. Just keep chopping. Just keep chopping. Like Michigan State and Rutgers. Appreciate that. Very, very, very much appreciate that. Like the video. Always like the video. That really helps get the videos recommended for more people out there as well. Mark says, what about a rotating schedule in conference, odd years and even years? I'd maybe have to hear more on that idea, what specifically you're talking about with a rotating schedule. But there's ways to do this in conference. So it seems like we're transitioning in conference. So, that's kind of one thing. I look, divisions are kind of, I don't know. I seem to change my mind every day, which isn't great. I know. But man, it's hard for me because I want to see divisions, because I want to see teams. Play for something, because a lot of times now when you have one division and you don't have two separate divisions, there's not a lot. How do you measure success? Like going forward, if you're Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, if you have those teams at the top, how does Minnesota measure success? How does Wisconsin measure success? How does Purdue measure success? How can they take steps together as a program? Is it just the number of wins? Is that how you measure success? I don't know. I think that's a question that needs to be asked. That's a big question that needs to be asked, in my opinion. So I don't know. I don't know how you do that. Divisions, you can measure, like those teams in the West right now, they measure success. Oh, we win our division and we're the best in the West division, and that's how we measure success within these teams. But now to measure success, sometimes you might have to be on that level of an Ohio State, of a Penn State, of a Michigan. So, yeah, that's kind of what I think together. So Gavin says, no divisions, Ohio State, Michigan, 3 weeks in a row. It loses the luster of some of these playoff games. I think we've talked about that before on past shows. It loses the oomph of some of these games. So I don't know. It's just, I don't want that. I don't want to see Ohio State, Michigan 2 weeks in a row because I just saw that Michigan dominated Ohio. I don't need to see it again. I know who's better. Okay, but if it happened in the middle of the season, maybe a couple of weeks before, yeah, that's, then that can be argued. But if we just saw it 6 to 7 days ago, we don't need to see it again. Like, we don't need a reboot. In this area of reboots, we don't need reboots. Less reboots, people. Thank you. It's like building a 747 while in the air. Oof. Hope they don't screw it up too bad. Got to stay afloat. Yeah, that's kind of been one thing. It's just like, I'd like to see more planning. I'd like to see commissioners get together. Like, I'd like to see people work together, I think, a little bit more on some of these rules, more uniform. The NCAA, I think, is disappointing because they don't take initiative. I feel like if the NCAA wanted... I feel like, I don't know what the rules are on this, and maybe, I feel like if the NCAA wanted, that they could install some rules where they have to play an NCAA type of playoff. I don't know. I feel like they could. They just don't want to be that. They feel like that's not their job. Okay? So, I don't know. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. This is kind of where we're at. Look, I don't think college football's in a bad spot. I will still watch. I'm still going to enjoy it. I still love the sport. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But it's just, there's a lot of ways that it can be a lot better. Here's an idea from Gavin that I've thought, isn't that the Big 12 might be doing that this year, right? We did have Kansas and Kansas State at the end of the season. We didn't have Texas and Texas Tech. What if they moved the rivalry games to a couple of weeks earlier? Even a couple of weeks earlier. But I still think you could fall into a potential, like what if you played Ohio State, Penn State the last game of the year, and those are still your top two teams? You know what I mean? It's just like, you can try to rotate it around, but... you got to try to avoid some of your heavy hitters late in the season. Now, late in the season, last game of the year, instead of having Ohio State, Michigan, what are you going to have? Ohio State, Indiana? That's going to really draw some ratings at the end of the year. You know what I mean? It's just like, you want to see those big rivalry games at the end of the season. But if that's the way it is, then that's the way it is. One other way I thought of, take away, if the Big Ten plays 9 conference games, why not play 8 conference games and then play a semifinals? Now you get 4 teams that play in a Big Ten semifinal. 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, and then the rest kind of trickle down. 5 could play 8, 6 would play 7. They wouldn't be in a playoff or anything. They would just play to have that 9th conference game. And you could have them at neutral sites. You could do whatever you wanted with them. But, it's going to be interesting to be able to sit back and watch how this sport evolves over time. I've also heard of things of the NCAA basketball tournament expanding. Man, we don't need more than 68 teams. Like, we just don't. We're fine. College basketball is already one of the best postseasons around. We don't need to really change it any more than it already is changed as well. Fox, Coyote, Wolf. Top-tier rivals going into the last weekend, potentially both undefeated. It does. I mean, those rivalry games at the end of the season, that's what you look forward to at the end of the year. I don't know. It's just it's hard for me to imagine Ohio State and Michigan not ending the season, Minnesota and Wisconsin not ending the season, even though I know Iowa, Minnesota used to end the season in the past. But I mean, I totally get it. I get all these points that are being brought up, and I don't envy the position that Kevin Warren currently finds himself in. So, good luck, I guess, trying to determine that kind of those kinds of things here. Kind of going back to the spring game. Man, do I wish the App State game was a spring game. Man, do I... Well, I'm not a Michigan fan, but maybe as a Big Ten fan, yeah, maybe I wish that as well. I don't know. I think that could benefit both teams. I think at an FCS level, it gets your eyeballs on a good football team and what you have to do, and you can kind of control the narrative of the game. It doesn't have to. It can be a full game. It can be more of a scrimmage style. You can determine what you want to do with that game. And I think practice against another team, you're hitting your own people. I think they play it safe, and things happen that way. And that's where you get spring games. And this would add, I think, a little intrigue to some of these spring games. I really do. I really like that. That's one idea I saw, and I'm like, man, that's a really good idea. I really like that as well. Yeah, I saw the ratings for this Ohio State-Michigan game. I think the only things that were rated higher was the NFL games, NFL and playoff, Super Bowl, that kind of thing. So, yeah, big-time ratings that Big Ten football is bringing in. I'm sure NBC and CBS loves to see that as well. That's some things you got to factor in as well. You got to factor in those new television partners, television deals, and what they are as well, what they want as well. It pulls a bunch of cash that week, but would anyone want to see Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back weeks? Michigan-Ohio State rival yearly, once it breaking rights? Yes, I get all of that, and I understand all of that. And that I think that needs to be avoided. However you do that, and I think that maybe that's what's taking the Big Ten and the SEC to really confirm some of these things. Okay? I've set back the Pac-12. This is their first year, of doing this sort of thing. Could you could you do something playing a non-conference game the last game of the season? But it's got to be a good one. I don't know. There's so much. I think the problem that college football and college sports has is the commissioners don't work together. There's no really governing body. The NCAA doesn't do it, and there's not really a governing body that does it every single year. Rich Eisen said, that was his second mention of the old SportsCenter anchor here today, said that more than the Stanley Cup or the World Series or the Super Bowl. Probably not true, but wow, in terms of, I honestly believe when it comes to Fox Sports, their second most valuable property that they have TV rights to is Big Ten, probably Big Ten football. Okay, I think Big Ten football is more valuable than their Major League Baseball contract. And yes, that includes the World Series. And when the Big Ten expands and maybe the Big Ten championship game becomes a much bigger deal with the playoff and with everything involved, and I think eventually when Fox, CBS, NBC, when other networks get involved in the college football playoff, that's going to be, for those respective networks, that's going to be their second most valuable sports property behind the National Football League. I firmly believe that. I think college football is right there in that situation. We already have non-conference games at the end of the season. Bowl games, unless you're Alabama playing Austin P. Yeah, those SEC, they got to do something with those SEC schedules against those FCS teams. It's just not a great time for an FCS team as well. You're kind of in the midst of a conference race, and then you got to go and get beat by 40 or whatever by Alabama. I don't know. As an FCS team, that kind of ruins your vibe. It kind of messes with the momentum you may or may not be building towards the FCS playoffs. So there's that as well. Really appreciate you guys coming on board for the chat for the live stream tonight. This was a Michigan Purdue Big Ten championship preview, among other things. Transfer portal discussion. We kind of got off topic a little bit, but that's fine. That's what that's what this avenue is here for. Just to remember, if you haven't already, great time to subscribe to the channel. Big Ten content every single day, and always crush the like button to spread the word to the masses. Also, follow on Twitter if you haven't already, at Big Ten Ted, if you are on the Twitter sphere while it still is here. quickly, we're gonna wrap things up here. But first game every year should be in conference by a conference tournament, according to Gavin. Whatever you finished year before, you'll face a team in another conference that finished. This would require the conferences working together, which we found this out during COVID in 2020, and we found it out in other times. They don't really work well together, and especially they don't work well together when you poach their members. So the Pac-12 maybe doesn't want to work with the Big Ten the most right now. So anyway, I think we're going to wrap this thing up for tonight. Really appreciate you guys. Great conversation about the future of the sport, about the future of college athletics. So here's what's coming up on the channel. We're going to have the Michigan Purdue preview. That's going to be tomorrow. Check out the Pick'em. You guys going to go for Purdue? You're going to go for Michigan. So make sure you check out the Pick'em as well. Trying to get a conversation with coordination to John Johnston talking about the Nebraska head coaching hire. Just kind of want to hear someone as well from that perspective that kind of covers that team a little bit more. So that's there as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's what's coming up on the channel. As I said, I'll be on the road in Fargo, so hopefully I'll have a reaction to the Michigan-Purdue Big Ten championship game. Once again, thank you, everybody, for coming on board the live stream tonight. Thank you for all your feedback. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for everything. As always, I'm Big Ten Ted, and we will see you in the next one.